Greetings everybody, it's me Rob from Sage Tower Games, and if you are into Pathfinder, you have probably seen various videos being made, specifically all stemmed from the initial video of from Taking 20 of why I'm quitting Pathfinder 2nd edition. When that video came out, there's been a bunch of other response videos from all different other Pathfinder YouTubers, and you guessed it, I'm gonna join the fray as well. Now, I've watched a bunch of the other videos, I've watched the initial video, and I have some thoughts, definitely have some thoughts. So, I'll post the link to the original video in the comments down below. And essentially, there are a few topics on the video that I kind of want to discuss about it. So, the main point is the illusion of choice, as he puts it. This idea that you think you have many choices with the 3 action system, which we've already discussed in a separate video about how the 3 action system is really nice, but when it comes down to it, actually you kind of have to do the same thing over and over if you want to be optimal, if you want to play correctly. And it leads to either boring playstyle, repetitive playstyle, and not interesting playstyle. Now, there are some points of that I agree on, some points that I don't agree on. You don't have to play the same way, and every class can be built a multitude of different ways. Yeah, there's the specific feats that you might need to take and that are more popular to take, but that doesn't mean you can't make another character of a different type and have it work. And if you're playing Adventure Path, he mentions Adventure Path in his video, as well as me. For myself, I primarily GM Adventure Path, so I kind of see how it runs. For the most part, you don't have to be super optimal to run these. Yes, the 2E Adventure Paths are a lot more cooler than the 1E ones. I feel like in 1E, you could generally bumble your way through most of the encounters no problem. And there were a few spikes. It definitely was a spiky game. There's no denying that. There were some instances where you would see very easy encounters, and then you would just get hit with a really hard encounter that if you weren't ready for, you would probably gonna die. 2E has similar issues. Age of Ashes is a pretty tough campaign. There are definitely a number of encounters there that are pretty hard. And yes, as he mentioned, and it's like I've mentioned in other videos, Age of Ashes was being written at the same time they kind of released 2E. So they didn't really know, they weren't fine-tuning it yet. They were kind of learning what they had to fine-tune. And they're still working on that. Agents of Edgewatch, the most recent adventure path that they're kind of releasing, still has issues. The first book has really tough encounters for a level 1, level 2 party that if they make a mistake, they can easily TPK on. And that's just not fun for anybody. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean the illusion of choice is bad and that you can't have to do specific actions. You don't have to. He relates it to an MMO rotation type thing. And I've played WoW, I've played Star Wars: The Old Republic a lot more, and I have spent time, I've spent hours practicing and perfecting my rotation for my characters to maximize my DPS. And I don't believe it's like that at all. Yes, some classes do have a bit of a rotation issue. Some examples, in my opinion, are like Swashbuckler, where you have to essentially gain panache and then use your finisher to do the most damage, and then kind of rinse and repeat. Magus, even though it's not out yet, the playtest for Magus, you have to essentially spend most of your turn doing spell striking, and that's really it. Like, if you want to do anything for your class, you gotta do spell strike. And I can see those being very repetitive. Other classes, however, I don't feel like are repetitive. Rangers, he mentions hunt. Yeah, you can do hunt prey, hunted shot, and maybe take a third shot, but you can also use an animal companion, give them an action. You can move around, you can cast spells if you have focus spells. You don't have to make shots all the time. Yes, it may not be the most damage, but again, you don't have to do the most damage every turn. Some encounters can be tough, but not every encounter is pushing you to that degree. And on the flip side, he's mentioned adventure paths and kind of how the creatures don't have to fight that way. You can edit adventure paths. I've watched a video, the No Nat 1 video, his response to it, and he mentioned adventure paths, and he mentioned how you can customize, change the encounters a bit. They don't have to just be party versus enemies on a flat terrain, or as the book exactly writes them. I have changed encounters in the book. I've either tweaked monsters, I've tweaked spell lists. That's a big thing. I feel like a lot of the spell lists that they give enemies in adventure paths kind of suck. I'll be honest. And I didn't say it at the beginning, I'll say it now as a preface. I'm definitely a biased person towards Paizo. You can tell my channel is primarily Pathfinder. I've been playing Pathfinder a lot more than ever than D&D really. So I'm definitely a pro Paizo individual, but a lot of the spell lists they make just don't make sense. I mean, they make sense, but in terms of will these spells actually make useful sense in combat? No. Case in point, to go rewind back all the way. First edition, there was anyone who's played Rise of the Runelords. Book 4, I believe is what it is. The Makmurian fight. The Stone Giant Wizard, he's the big bad of that book. Spoilers, but it's been out for 10+ years. Sorry. Not sorry. He has an interesting spell list, and I actually, because his spell list was so interesting, I rolled with it. So basically, his spell list, for those that haven't encountered that, is he's in a room. The first thing he does is he casts like solid fog right on the door, so they can't see. He has special goggles that allow him to see it through fog, so he can see the party before they can see him. And then so he casts this fog, and he casts obscuring fog to slow them down. Then he casts Cloud Kill outside the first person who comes out of the fog. He casts Cloud Kill on them, so essentially they get hit with the Cloud Kill, and then it rolls into the fog for the people still in there that can't see it. He does all these fog spells, and then he has like Disintegrate, and then other like classic wizard spells. It's a cool concept for a thing. The problem was, it didn't actually, in practice, it doesn't make sense. Because it's very easy for a player to just run out of the fog for the whole turn, and that just defeats the purpose. Now, yes, this was I think, translation error between 3.5 and Pathfinder, but end of the day, that character could have been reworked. To bring you to a more recent example, I had an enemy that had a 5th level spell. I changed the 5th level spell to something more interesting that would actually have more impact to the combat. So you can change the encounters, and you can either upscale or downscale the encounters. As I believe it was No Nat 1 kind of mentions, if you see an encounter and you know your party has no chance to overcome the thing, or they just don't have what they need to beat it, change it. For another example, just spit those examples out, is Starfinder. Similar system. I mean, kind of was a little bit of 1E, a little bit of 2E. I had an encounter. I gave my big bad Resilient Sphere. I don't think they actually had it. No, I think they do have Resilient Sphere, I think, normally. But I checked the sphere rule, and I said, okay, if I cast this sphere, and they fail their save, and they're stuck in this sphere for like 10 minutes, can they get out of the sphere? Because the last thing you want to do in an encounter is cast a spell like that, have your player fail, and that player is essentially out of the combat for the whole combat. They'll just leave the computer, they'll just leave the table. What's the point? If they can't do anything, so in this case, the party member I used it on had Dimension Door, so they could Dimension Door out of it, which I knew that's what they would do, and sure enough, they did that. But it kind of wasted the turn for them, and at least I was able to still cast off a powerful looking spell. So again, you can change encounters. That being said, is everything perfect? No. I will say not everything is perfect in 2E. I can agree to that. Having discussion in my own personal Discord, various actions that people say don't get used as much, and that could probably get used more in combat to make things more interesting, they rarely get used. Aid, sense motive, crawl, burrow, mount, all these different things that are technically rules for, but they just don't use them. And yeah, those I think are highly situational, and there could probably be more situations where they incorporate them, and I feel like that Paizo could definitely, especially in the adventure paths, put in more of that, and I feel like they eventually will, the more and more they kind of get their feet sturdy in 2E. But for now, yeah, Age of Ashes specifically is your traditional, very combat-driven adventure path. Similar to Dead Suns, similar to Rise of the Rune Lords, in my opinion. The other point I want to bring up is the diplomacy example that he uses in the Taking 20 video, where if your GM doesn't like saying I, and if you don't mind kind of saying to your GM that you want to roleplay for a minute with this NPC and then roll a diplomacy check, I don't quite get what he's trying to convey in that message. It sounds wrong to me. It sounds like, so either you are saying that using the diplomacy rules is wrong and it should be more based on the actual roleplay, which I believe, I have to go through the rulebook. I think in most cases they do say the GM can have on their discretion, they can rule it a specific way. Like if the player wants to roleplay and they do a really good job roleplaying, you shouldn't penalize them for that. You shouldn't say, okay, you did a really good job roleplaying for a minute, or roleplaying this conversation, but you rolled really crappy. So the DC is there as well for people that don't want to roleplay. If you want to influence this NPC, but you don't have the roleplay chops to kind of talk them up or say what you need to say, just roll the DC and move on. Gives you both options. There's nothing saying that you have to specifically be like, okay, it says make an impression is you got to speak to the party at least 1 minute, so we're going to have a 1 minute conversation and you need to talk in first person. I mean, it's just, to me, I think that's wrong. Especially when you're trying to use the rules in the system to convey the message. Now, there are other things you can do. Again, some other videos mention the different variants you can use in the game. Hero points are pretty big in 2nd edition. The free archetype variant rule is a really good one I use in both of my campaigns, and essentially gives your character a free archetype feat to use for archetypes to kind of flesh your character out, make it a bit more interesting, a bit more dynamic. Now, I know what you're going to say. You shouldn't have to use variant rules to make the core system better. And you're right, you shouldn't. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It allows people who feel that way to make the game more interesting. It wasn't until the end of like 1E time that I really got into using background skills variant, and I felt like that made the skills so much more refreshing for the players to actually have a bit more skills that they can actually use. So But it doesn't change the overall impact. Yeah, they get a free feat, and the feat, he talks about the feat buckets compared to the feat tiers, and yes, Paizo has always been big on the feat lists and the feat system. It is, for good or bad, and there's definitely bad things. Anybody who's played in 1E, you probably have bookmarked the elephant in the room feat tax system just to make the feats actually usable. And they are a lot better in 2E, definitely not perfect, but it's giving more ability to flesh out your feats definitely helps. He talks about the druids, his druid player, kind of getting bored, always wild shaping into a dinosaur and then just attacking. Well, change things up. If he turns into a dinosaur, there's a good chance he probably doesn't have many reach attacks. Attack with flying creatures. If there's dragons, dragons shouldn't be on the ground for the most part. They should be up in the air. They should be always attacking, always moving. And in general, you shouldn't be, if you're not like a martial type character, you shouldn't run into melee that often, because getting attacked back 3-4 times is gonna hurt. And yeah, dinosaurs definitely do a lot of damage, but being swarmed from multiple sides can easily overcome them. And druids have a ton of spells that they can use that do a ton of damage and a ton of utility that they still get while they can wild shape. I mean, not like at the same time, but the choice is there. Just because you're doing it one particular way doesn't mean that's the only way to play that character. So, at Adventure Pass, as I've kind of talked briefly about in this video, definitely need work. And like I said, as someone who plays Adventure Pass, some of the encounters are definitely questionable. Some of the encounters make no sense, and some of them definitely you just can't play them off the book. And I trust Taken 20 that he knows. He's played it for a while. He knows how to run these systems. He knows how to do things. He knows how to manipulate stuff. But there's a lot more you can be done, and these issues aren't Pathfinder specific. I feel like in any system you can boil it down to this illusion of choice, where you do A, B, C to get the most out of your game. And yeah, there's no harm in being the best, but you don't have to do A, B, C every time. You can get away with it. You can play a weird character that doesn't do much. Worst case, if it's really struggling on your party, add a few weak adjustments to creatures. Reduce the number of creatures. Change up a few spells. Make it so that at the end of the day, your players still have fun. They can do what they want in terms of like interesting builds, and still be challenged. I feel like as long as the players are challenged, I don't mind if they don't like risk death. For instance, there's very few instances where I've had players get close to dying in Age of Ashes, and we've been through 2 books so far. But I've challenged them. I've knocked them down. They've hit dying level, dying 1, dying 2, even dying 3, I think. So that's what you want. You want them to have that threat. And the illusion of choice, that's kind of what Adventure Paths really are, essentially. The Adventure Path is supposed to give you that illusion of choice that, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but we all kind of, but the truth is it's gearing you in one direction to follow the story. How you get there, that's up to you. But the choice at the end of the day is always going to be that you're eventually going to go to this dungeon because you have to go save this person or get this item. You may think you have the choice, but you really don't. Now, to kind of wrap up this video, final takeaway points for this type of response video. And like I said, there's been all over every video. I've seen tons of these videos being made already. Pathfinder 2nd edition is not perfect. It's really good, and I feel like it improves a lot on 1st edition. But it is not the perfect system. Neither is 5e. And this notion that you have a rotation, while is usually correct in that sense of, if you want to do the most damage, this is what you should do every turn, this is what you should equip yourself with, what feats you should take, what spells you should take, is accurate. I feel like it's not a necessary thing, and the video makes it sound like that you have to do this to survive, to play the game. And there's no sense of this of roleplay aspect, and there is. You can roleplay just as fine in Pathfinder as you can in D&D. There's no real difference. Yeah, there are rules for diplomacy and stuff like that, but you can make adjustments to the DCs. And yeah, a bad roll is a bad roll. That's what happens. But at the end of the day, it's still, in my opinion, a great system. And I look forward to playing more and more of it, introducing more and more people to Pathfinder 2e, helping them learn the system, and helping them see that there is more to this than just a D&D clone. So, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you guys in the comments down below. Let me know what you guys think about 2nd edition. What if you guys have seen the Taken 20 video, your thoughts on that as well. And if you think what things can be improved on, what things can be improved on. So again, post it down in the comments below, and make sure to follow me here on YouTube, as well as on Twitch or on Facebook, all on the same name, Stage Tower Games. And again, if you are interested in seeing some Adventure Paths live in action, we have Age of Ashes every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. And we have Agents of Edgewatch every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see everybody next time.